The night air was thick with smoke and desperation as the young boy scrambled over a heap of rotting trash. He flinched as a rat darted past, squealing, and hissed under his breath. "Not today, not today," he whispered, searching for anything that could be sold, anything that could fill the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. Around him, the city slept, oblivious to the lives hiding in its shadows. This boy, no older than 12, had already learned what hunger felt like, what fear felt like, what it meant to have nothing. No roof, no food, no family to turn to. He spotted a crushed bottle, and for a brief moment his heart leaped. Maybe he could sell it. But then came the voice, low and menacing. "Hey you, move it." A bigger boy shoved him hard, knocking him into the muck. "That's mine," he spat. The younger boy scrambled up, wiping blood and dirt from his lip, eyes blazing with fury and desperation. "I'm not taking your stupid bottle," he shouted, though his voice trembled. Somewhere deep in that chaos, he made a decision. He wouldn't let life break him. If the world refused to care, he would rise on his own. Somehow, someday. That spark, the flicker of defiance, would not be extinguished. Years passed, but the streets remained relentless teachers. Every corner, every discarded scrap, every bitter encounter carved lessons into his young soul. By 16, he had learned to read people as deftly as he could read the markets. Small hustles, risky schemes, whispered deals, they became his currency for survival. And yet, amidst all the cunning and hard-earned skill, he never forgot the hollow ache in his heart. The family he had lost so young, torn from him by tragedy, haunted his dreams, refusing to fade. One evening, huddled in the corner of a dimly lit alley, he overheard two businessmen laughing about a failing enterprise. Their arrogance sparked an idea in him, a dangerous idea, but one he couldn't ignore. He approached cautiously, introducing himself with more confidence than he felt. "I think I can help turn your company around," he said, voice steady, heart hammering. The men laughed at first, amused by the audacity of a street kid offering advice. But when he laid out numbers, strategies, and projections, precise, daring, clever, they stopped laughing. Something about him, it wasn't just knowledge, it was fire, determination, a raw, impossible to ignore energy. Within a year, that audacity had become a reputation. Deals followed deals. The boy who once scavenged trash now negotiated boardrooms. He learned quickly that the world outside the streets demanded a different kind of cunning. No longer were threats physical. They were legal, financial, social. He had to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast at every step. But even as wealth accumulated, the hollow place inside him persisted. Mansions, cars, investments, these were trophies of survival, not of fulfillment. He longed not just for success, but for something deeper, connection, family, legacy. It was during a quiet evening in his penthouse, overlooking the sparkling city, that the thought struck him like lightning. If I could build an empire from nothing, why can't I find the people who gave me life? He had spent decades chasing profit, proving himself, crushing odds, but now the pursuit of his true treasure, his family, called louder than any contract or merger. He began quietly, cautiously, with whispered inquiries and old contacts, a cousin, a neighbor, anyone who might have known someone from his past. The search was frustrating, exhausting, and emotionally draining. Leads fell apart, people disappeared, and hope threatened to collapse. He felt the old fear creeping back, the fear of loss, of failure, of never finding what he had been missing. Yet each setback only hardened his resolve. He remembered nights on the streets, nights he had survived hunger, threats, humiliation. If he could survive that, he could survive this. Months passed before the first real lead emerged. A distant aunt, remembered faintly from childhood, had lived just a few towns away. She didn't know he had survived, let alone thrived. The conversation was tentative, charged with belief and disbelief. "Is it really you?" she asked, voice trembling. I thought I lost you forever." Tears filled both their eyes, spilling over in a torrent that felt both cleansing and terrifying. The reunion ignited something within him, something more profound than wealth or recognition. He realized that the empire he had built, the life he had clawed from poverty, was still incomplete. He needed to ensure that what he had endured, what he had conquered, could create continuity. Not just for himself, but for a successor, someone who could inherit not only his wealth, but his vision, his values, and the strength he had cultivated through suffering. At first, he considered grooming someone in his company, a rising star, capable and intelligent, but none felt right. The heart, the instinct, the fire he sought could not be taught entirely. Then it hit him. The answer had been there all along: family, blood, the connection that survived absence, hunger, and pain. That bond could not be replicated, it had to be found, and he would not rest until he did. Word of his search leaked quietly among close associates. Some were skeptical, others worried. "You've already made billions, why chase ghosts?" one confidant said. He shook his head, determined. "I've learned something money can't buy. I will not fail at this, not now." Weeks of tracking led to a small town on the outskirts of the city. The streets were unremarkable, quiet, almost sleepy, but for him, every step drew closer to something monumental. He knocked on the door of an aging man, a man whose eyes widened in disbelief the moment they met. Recognition, shock, joy, fear, relief. A lifetime of emotions condensed into a single heartbeat. "Yes, it's you," he whispered, voice trembling. "All these years you survived." "I did," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat, "but I couldn't have truly lived until I found you." Tears, embraces, words too fragile to capture decades of separation. And then, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson, he realized he was no longer just a man who had risen from poverty. He was a man who had reclaimed his past, secured his present, and could now safeguard the future. And in that moment, he made a decision. The family he had found would not only reunite with him emotionally, but would also become part of the empire he had built. He would choose a successor, someone to carry the legacy forward, not because of ambition or merit alone, but because of the bond, the resilience, the fire that had survived everything. And that choice, that final choice, would happen in the most dramatic, last-minute twist imaginable. He spent the next days walking the narrow streets of the town, observing his family from afar before revealing himself fully. Every step carried memories, echoes of laughter lost, tears shed in silence, and the crushing weight of years spent apart. The people he once called family looked older, smaller, fragile in ways that money could never mend. He approached carefully, his voice low but steady. "Is it really you?" a voice asked before he could speak. A young woman, a niece he barely remembered, stared at him with wide, unbelieving eyes. "Yes, it's me," he said, his throat tight. "I've missed so many years. I'm here now." Her hands trembled as she reached for his. "All this time, I thought you were gone forever." "I know," he whispered, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I thought I was lost too, but I survived and I couldn't rest until I found you." Tears rolled freely now. The little house that once seemed cramped now swelled with emotion. He sat with them that night, telling stories of the streets he had survived, of every night hunger had threatened to break him, of every small victory that had pushed him forward. They listened, stunned, riveted, unable to reconcile the boy they had lost with the man sitting before them. "Your journey, it's incredible," the niece said finally, voice shaking. "How did you survive all that?" "I had no choice," he said, a bitter smile crossing his face. "Life doesn't hand survival out freely. You fight or you fade." They laughed and cried in turns. The reunion was messy, chaotic, beautiful, everything he had imagined and far beyond. But underneath it all, a gnawing question lingered in his mind. He had achieved wealth beyond imagination, but what good was an empire without someone to continue the mission? someone who understood the fire that survival had forged. That night, alone in his temporary room, he stared at the family photos he had brought along, thinking. He needed a successor, someone who could not only manage his empire, but also uphold the values he had built from nothing: resilience, courage, and unshakable determination. And yet none of his employees, advisors, or protégés had the heart he sought. None had survived loss the way he had. None had carried fire in their veins that would burn through adversity without flinching. The answer startled him. The solution had been in front of him all along. Family. The same people he had searched for years, the same people who had unknowingly survived and adapted, carried within them the same resilience. It wasn't just about blood, it was about shared history, shared struggle, shared survival. The successor he needed was among them, but who? The dilemma tormented him. He spent long hours talking to each of them, learning their stories, their strengths, their weaknesses. The youngest had a daring curiosity, the older a strategic mind, and the niece a fire he recognized instantly. Each conversation felt like peeling back layers, searching for that spark. "Why me?" the niece asked one evening, her eyes bright but questioning. "Why would you think I could inherit anything from you?" He smiled softly. "It's not about being ready now. It's about potential, about fire, about understanding what it means to fight for everything you have. You survived life when it tried to break you. That makes you stronger than anyone I've ever met. I don't know if I can live up to that or your legacy." "You will," he said firmly. "I'll guide you. I'll teach you everything I've learned, but you must want it. You must want to fight for it as I did." Meanwhile, tension began to build elsewhere. His rivals in business had sensed his attention distracted. Some were whispering about vulnerabilities, others plotting roofs against his empire. He had to make his decisions soon, not tomorrow, not next week. Every day wasted could jeopardize everything he had built. And then the moment arrived, a critical meeting with investors, a chance to finalize a merger worth billions, and he realized he could not afford hesitation. He gathered his family together one last time before the boardroom. The niece's hands were trembling. The cousins looked nervous but attentive. "This is it," he said. "Everything I've built, everything I've survived, it's all here. But it's not enough for me if I don't know the next generation will continue the mission. Someone here will take that torch, someone who understands what it takes to survive and thrive, and the choice will be made today." The room was silent, the weight of his words pressed against every heart. Each family member glanced at the other, wondering who it would be. He looked around, seeing the same fire that had carried him from the streets, the same fire that had refused to die. Hours passed in conversation, in testing, in challenges that measured instinct, intelligence, and courage. He listened to arguments, observed decisions, asked questions that pushed them to the edge. And all the while the clock ticked, reminding him that the business world was waiting, rivals were scheming, and empires secured. Finally, the niece made a bold decision, a choice that revealed both courage and insight. She proposed a solution to a problem that mirrored the challenges he had faced in his youth, a test of ingenuity, adaptability, and daring. He watched her carefully, heart racing. In that moment, he knew. The fire had chosen its bearer, and she had risen to the challenge. "You're ready," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the business, not just for wealth, but for everything this represents. You understand struggle. You understand resilience. You understand fire." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "I won't let you down." "I know," he said, taking her hands in his. "And if you ever falter, remember this. I once clawed my way from nothing, and I will be with you every step of the way." The tension in the air lifted slightly, but the adrenaline remained. He had made the decision, but the world beyond their reunion demanded immediate attention. Deals had to be signed, rivals countered, empires secured. He moved with precision, now confident that his legacy would be in capable hands. Yet the emotions remained raw. That night, alone with the niece, he recounted more of his past, stories he had never shared, lessons that cost him pain to learn. "You must always remember," he said, "wealth can be taken, power can fade, but resilience, courage, love, those are eternal." She listened, absorbing each word, the weight of responsibility sinking in. Yet in her eyes he saw hope, determination, and the spark that had ignited his own journey so many years ago. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent life, but inside, a legacy had been secured. The boy who had once scavenged trash had not only found his family, but had ensured that his fire, his struggle, and his triumph would endure. The following morning, the city was alive with motion and noise, but inside the mansion, time seemed suspended. Every decision, every heartbeat carried weight. The boardroom awaited, investors impatient, rivals scheming. But he walked in with calm precision, his family at his side, the niece now radiating the confidence that had earned her this moment. The meeting began with polite smiles and formal greetings, but the air was electric. Negotiations, projections, and strategic proposals filled the room. He watched her, side by side, presenting ideas with clarity, courage, and insight. Every word she spoke reflected the lessons he had fought to instill, every decision a testament to her resilience. A senior investor leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Impressive," he said slowly, "but can she really handle the pressures of this empire? This is not a game." "She can," the billionaire said, voice steady, cutting through the tension. "Not because she has been handed wealth, but because she understands struggle. She knows what it means to fight for every step. She knows resilience because she has lived it. And if you doubt that, watch closely." Minutes turned into hours, and the niece navigated challenges with precision. At one point, a rival executive tried to corner her with a risky proposal. She paused, measured, and countered with an ingenious solution, one that mirrored his own early streetwise ingenuity, but refined through the lessons he had taught her. Gasps filled the room. The senior investor leaned forward, impressed. The billionaire felt a swell of pride, not for himself, not for the empire he had built, but for this moment where the fire he had nurtured in her lit the room. He caught her eye, a silent exchange. "You have this. You are ready." Finally, the final contract was placed on the table. The room held its collective breath. "Sign it," he said quietly, almost to himself. She picked up the pen with hands trembling slightly, looked at him once more, then at the room, and signed. The paper thudded against the table like a heartbeat. The deal was done. Cheers erupted, deals finalized, rivals momentarily silenced, and the world outside resumed its indifferent chaos. But inside, the mansion was filled with a different kind of triumph, the triumph of family, resilience, and legacy. Later that night, the niece sat across from him in the quiet of the study. "I still can't believe this is real," she admitted, voice soft. "All this power, responsibility, it's overwhelming." He smiled, leaning back. "It's meant to be overwhelming. That's how you know it matters. But remember, it's never just about wealth. It's about vision, courage, and integrity. You survived because you have fire. Never let it fade." Tears sprang to her eyes. "I'm scared." "Good," he said gently. "Fear keeps you sharp, but courage carries you forward. You have both now, and I'll be here every step of the way." They walked through the mansion together, a place that had once been his solitary kingdom, now alive with the promise of continuity. He remembered nights on the streets, nights spent scavenging and shivering, wondering if he would survive to see a future at all. And now, in this house filled with warmth, laughter, and hope, he realized that every hardship had led him to this exact moment, the moment where the past, present, and future converged. It was late when the family gathered in the grand dining room. Stories were shared, laughter ringing louder than it had in decades, tears flowing freely as memories of absence and survival intertwined with gratitude and hope. The billionaire watched quietly, his heart swelling. All the wealth, all the power, all the trophies meant nothing if this human connection, this reclaimed family, did not exist. The niece stood to make a toast. To family, she said, voice steady but emotional. To fire that survives anything, and to the man who showed us what it truly means to fight, rise, and never give up. He raised his glass, overwhelmed. To the future, he said simply, and to ensuring that every lesson learned, every struggle endured is never forgotten. May resilience guide you, courage protect you, and love surround you. The clinking of glasses echoed, sealing not just the reunion, but a promise, an unspoken vow that the fire of survival, of triumph over adversity would endure for generations. Later that night, alone in his study, he reflected. He had risen from poverty to wealth, from hunger to power, from fear to courage. He had reclaimed his family, found his successor, and ensured that the legacy he had fought so hard to create would continue. But more importantly, he understood that true wealth is not measured in currency, but in connection, in resilience, and in the hearts of those who carry your vision forward. He opened his laptop and drafted a message to the board, to his team, and to the wider empire. Clarity, strategy, and direction. And at the very end, he typed a personal note to his niece. Never forget where you came from. Never forget the fire that burns in you. And never forget that the future is yours to shape. The night air was calm outside, the city oblivious to the monumental moments that had transpired. But inside, a story that began in trash, in hunger, and desperation had reached its apex. A boy who once had nothing had found not only success, but family, legacy, and the reassurance that fire, courage, and resilience are never wasted. They only wait for the right moment to ignite. As dawn approached, he stepped onto the balcony, looking out at the city skyline, heart full. He knew challenges would come, they always did, but now he had what truly mattered: a successor, a family, and the unshakable knowledge that the empire he had built would endure, guided by the same principles that had carried him from nothing to everything. He turned back into the mansion, finding his niece waiting, eyes shining with determination. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I am," she said, firm, confident, and alive with purpose. "Good," he said, smiling. "Then let's make sure the world knows what fire really is." And with that, the boy who had once scavenged trash had not only reclaimed his life, but secured a future, proof that no matter how dark the beginnings, with courage, resilience, and heart, one could rise, thrive, and pass the torch to the next generation.